Now it's time to take a look back and forward to the week ahead. With me this week is the Daily Record's political editor, David Clegg, and trade union activist and co-founder of the Radical Independence Campaign, Kat Boyd. Welcome to you both. David, Catalonia, I mean, there was this suggestion there they might be prepared to compromise if they can have another referendum, but it's just very unclear what's going to happen.
It is very unclear, and I think actually tactically President Puigdemont played it badly last week by saying we're going to declare independence but we're not declaring it now. He showed weakness there, and the Madrid government doesn't show any sign of capitulating or even being willing to negotiate.
Yeah, I mean, if he'd hoped by doing that, Kat, that there would be a response from Madrid, well, there wasn't, was there?
Yeah, but I think that the entire blame for the escalation of the geopolitical crisis in Spain and Europe that's been caused by this, the fault lies entirely with the Spanish state. Like, all of the polls showed that in a referendum, like, the case for Catalan independence would probably be lost until the Spanish state started its heavy-handed approach, its use of police and state violence to stop thousands of people voting. And I think that that escalation is really their fault.
Yes, Manuel Rajoy arguably is a better stoker of independence for Catalonia than Mr. Puigdemont.
It did seem to be a casebook study of how not to deal with a referendum. I mean, I think the opinion polls still suggest that the no side would win if there was a referendum tomorrow, and indeed we saw people taking to the streets for Spanish unity.
But is there an element here that we don't understand Spain? We just think it's like Britain, and everyone says, why can't it be like the deal that David Cameron did? They have a constitution which outlaws. It's a bit like in America. If you wanted one of the states to have an independence referendum, you know, they had a civil war over this.
There is a legal framework there that I think that's a justifiable point. But I think there's also a sinister difference in that there is more fear of state violence in Spain than there is in the UK.
For obvious reasons.
It showed that people who were concerned about that, the way they've dealt with this referendum, has shown that they were justified in being so.
Tax, Kat, I'm not sure where we got in that debate. What do you think should happen, if anything?
Well, I think that, you know, your polls in that last piece showed that there's, you know, now a majority of people in Scotland who would be happy to see taxes increase if they're spent on public services.
The trouble with that argument is people always say that, and then they vote for the people who say they won't put their taxes up.
Well, that's what political leadership is for, isn't it? Do you know, we need to have political leaders to say we need to pay more tax if we want to have the best public services and we want to give public sector workers a decent pay rise. You know, that's what politicians should be doing. They should be leading on the debate on that. That's what I'd like to see, rather than a, you know, friendly discussion about whether we should raise taxes. Of course.
So you think the SNP should just say, we're going to do this, here's what we're going to do, and actually argue for it?
But I think they've already lost that point, though, because if they were going to do that, they had to do it before the 2016 election. They should have stood on a manifesto commitment to do so. To stand on it.
Where we are at the end of the day, do you know, and what I'm saying is, like, whilst the SNP are talking about having this discussion, I'm saying actually they should be talking about, this is why we need to increase taxes, a tax system that should be based on people's ability to pay. The people who earn most should pay more in order to pay for public services.
But I do think you need to take the country with you, and I'm not sure the SNP can credibly do that now because of the way they've pursued this. It seems quite clear to me that they're asking for this discussion because they're looking cover to do something different to that was in their manifesto.
But they're going to have to do something, aren't they? Because they're going to have a deal to get their budget through.
They want to blame somebody else, though, if there's a public reaction to putting income tax up. Clearly, they're looking to put it up because they want more money for public funding, to have more resources there. But they have a manifesto where they were very, 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 very conservative in what they were proposing.
I'm not sure. The Green Party stuff is really good. You know, the proposals that they've put forward are things that the trade union movement have been arguing for a long time. You know, increasing. They now have new tax powers. The Scottish Government, therefore, has new responsibilities when it comes to public services. We can't be trapped in this situation where austerity in Scotland, the poverty statistics that Jim outlined, are consistently just about what's happening at Westminster. There's new responsibility within the Scottish Parliament, and the Scottish Government now have the ability to do something different.
I'm not sure there was an answer to the question, hang on a minute, we spend more per head in public spending in Scotland without getting noticeably better services than in England. So if I'm a voter, why should I pay even more when there's no evidence that the extra money is getting me anything better?
I think you can argue that there's structural reforms that could be undertaken, or that there's other ways to spend the money that could perhaps lead to better outcomes, but I don't think that we can have the kind of budget cuts that we've seen in education, for example, as that's one of the examples you've cited, that we've had over the last few years, the reduction in teacher headcount. All that stuff is obviously going to help if you can do something to stem the flow there. So I think that there is an argument for income tax rises to invest in public services, but I think it's going to be difficult for the SNP to credibly make the case because of where they are. If they want to get it through the Parliament, that's not going to be a problem, because Labour and the Greens are both backing it.
Do you think there's an argument, Kat, for, to use the jargon, hypothecated taxes? If you're going to justify it, to say, like, we'll put a penny on income tax, and this is where we'll spend it, and we'll guarantee we'll spend it on X.
I mean, I think that's a potential way forward. You know, I mean, it definitely is. But I think, like, the proposals that the Green Party are outlining about new rates of tax, new bands of tax, is really an interesting direction that there'll have to be some agreement, you know, for the budget. I mean, the Scottish Government have now committed to scrapping the pay cap, for example, scrapping the 1%. But what actually is going to replace that? If you want to give public sector workers in Scotland a decent cost of living rise, then you can't offer 1.2% or 1.5%. Okay. It has to be more than that.
Time for you to give a brief comment, Jim Sillars. I see himself says lovely not to be in a party.
I find a lot of his analysis cogent and convincing. I think that there is a level of denial in the SNP leadership at the minute about what the election result in June meant for the future, and he seems to be more aware of exactly what those difficulties are and perhaps the questions they need to address, not least the 2021 issue.
Give Kat 10 seconds.
On
Jim Sillars.
Look, there's lots I agree with Jim on. There are things I don't agree with Jim on, like, you know, fracking and things. I mean, I think that Jim has a decent analysis of the EU. Catalonia proves that the EU are undemocratic and always on the side of the powerful.
Well, I have to stop you there. That's all from us this week. Thank you both. I'll be back at the same time next week. Until then, goodbye.